Greetings, brothers and sisters. We're going to talk about wisdom and the least commandment. Now, about the Ten Commandments, what's really important to point out is that they were presented personally by the Most High. They were also inscribed by the finger of Elohim himself. And they were written upon 2 tablets of stone. And this is representing a testimony and a witness, because you see the law stipulated that everything must be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. So if man rejects the commandments, then these 2 testimonies will stand as a testimony to him. Now also the law was given on Shavuot. Now Shavuot in English means Feast of Weeks, and it is this counting of the Omer. They counted 7 times 7, 49 weeks. And this is really prophetic and profound, because what we discover is that Yeshua, when he fulfilled the new covenant by fulfilling all of the prophecies in the Daniel 70-week prophecy. Now we see that it was the sabbatical year prophecy, and exactly there on that 50th year was the year of Jubilee, and it was the time of setting the captives free, clearing all debt. You see, Yeshua fulfilled this perfectly. Now also observe that the new covenant was also established by Yeshua, and the promise of the Ruach Kodesh was given as a deposit to those believers. Now this also occurred on that 50th day. So this 50th day was a day that the captives were set free in the Jubilee year, but also it is the day that the Ruach Kodesh and the Ten Commandments were given. Now that is wisdom. Now also see, it has always been about the commandments. You see, they were written in stone, symbolizing those covenant breakers, because you see their hearts were hard as stone and they did not keep the commandments. Now the new covenant was to be inscribed and written within the minds of the believers. Now let's discuss what is the least of the commandments. Now observe the 10 Commandments as outlined in Exodus chapter 20. Now one may argue that the least of those commandments would be the 4th commandment. Now let's think about this for a moment. You see, Yeshua said in Matthew 5, in verse 17, he says, "Do you think I've come to abolish the Torah or the prophets? I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." And then in verse 19, he said, "Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commandments and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called the greatest in the kingdom of heaven." So you see, man has put aside this 4th commandment, which is all to do with remember the Sabbath day. Now it is the only commandment that we're commanded to remember, because the wisdom of the Most High knew that this commandment would be considered the least and it would be set aside. Now that is truly amazing. Now also James teaches us in chapter 2 verse 10, it says, "For whoever keeps the whole Torah," and remember, it has always been about the commandments. Now there are all these other laws, but it was the commandments that were delivered personally to the Most High, because you see, everything hangs upon these commandments like branches on a tree. And what we're told there in James chapter 2 verse 10, it says, "For whoever keeps the whole Torah and yet stumbles at just one point is guilty of breaking all of it." So you see, by setting aside just this least commandment, we are breaking all of the law. Now we're also told in Hebrews chapter 13 verse 8, Yeshua the Messiah is the same yesterday and today and forever. So basically, in other words, he does not change his mind like man. His word is his bond, and the word is truth. Now the Creator is not going to personally give us his commandments and then change his mind later on, saying we don't have to observe them. Now, of course, Yeshua is very clear on this topic. Now also an important thing to take into consideration, in Revelations chapter 7 verse 3, we're told, do not harm the earth, the sea, or the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our Elohim on their foreheads. Now of course, the forehead represents your mind. It is where you take counsel, your thoughts, your decisions, your dedication. And it is where you need to keep the laws, because the laws were to be written within the minds, the hearts of the people. Now, what is this seal that we're told? It commands that the angels not to touch the earth, the sea, or the trees. And the trees symbolize us, till they have sealed the servants. Now also in Isaiah chapter 8 verse 16 it says, bind up the testimony, seal the Torah among my disciples. Now there's only one place where we can find the seal of Elohim, and that's in his fourth commandment. Now a seal basically is an official document for a king, and normally it contains three very important characteristics: the name, the office, and the territory. Now isn't that truly amazing? You see, what is outstanding when we consider this is that in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve were commanded, just took one commandment. They were free to eat from any of the trees in the garden, but from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they were to keep away from. And this tree we know symbolizes Satan. But you see, they were deceived, and it may have seemed like a very, not an important commandment, but nevertheless, it was through disobedience that they were cast out of paradise. Now, in like manner, it is a very simple commandment. Remember the Sabbath day. And there's a reason for that. I'm going to share that with you in a moment. You see, the Creator does everything by His wisdom, His knowledge, and His understanding. And there's a reason He said to remember the Sabbath. And we'll talk about that in a moment. You see, there is a deeper mystery embedded within the Sabbath. And it is one to do with rest. And it also has a lot to do with obedience to the Most High. The Sabbath is all about the seventh day, and this symbolized the end of creation. And we see that everywhere within the book of Revelation, it is all to do with the number 7. And this is all about perfection and completion of all things and the end of this world. Now also, the seventh day was symbolic, because we're told in Ezekiel chapter 20 verse 12, moreover I also give them my Sabbaths to be a sign between me and them, that they might know that I am Yehova who sanctifies them. Now of course, we see that Adam and Eve were cast out of paradise, the kingdom, due to breaking one of the commandments, and that was listening and hearkening to the serpent. And this was to do with disobedience, not trusting and keeping maybe what it may appear as a insignificant commandment had serious repercussions. And we see the result of this disobedience in this world around us. Now, of course, the Creator in His infinite wisdom has presented mankind with an option to return, and the requirements is to accept and keep His laws and His covenant. Now, we're told in Hebrews chapter 4 verse 6, therefore, since it still remains for some to enter that rest, and since those who formerly had the good news proclaimed to them did not go in because of their disobedience. So you see, by observing and keeping all the Father's commandments, we'll be given the right to enter the kingdom. And you see, what's amazing is that seventh day symbolized entering the kingdom. Now, we know that to enter into Yeshua's kingdom, we will find true rest. And we get rest in Yeshua. And this is really the meaning of that seventh day, the perfection and completion of the saints, which occurs on that final day. Now, but of course we know it will be Yeshua who will be the one that decides if we enter His kingdom or not. And we will not enter due to disobedience. Now also we see that the dragon became furious with the woman and went off to make war on the rest of her offspring, on those who keep the commandments of Elohim and hold to the testimony of Yeshua. And he stood on the sand of the sea. That's in Revelation chapter 12, verse 17. And we also see in Revelations chapter 14, verse 12, it says, "Here is a call for the endurance of the saints, those who keep the commandments of Elohim and their faith in Yeshua." Now that word commandments there comes from the Greek word in Torah, and it is to do with the word to do with mitzvah, and it's to do with the commandments. Now we can observe carefully that the dragon was furious with those who keep the commandments. That's important to note. And we'll also see that those who keep the commandments are those who enter the kingdom.